3 shots. First shot missed his head. The second shot got a little bit closer. And the third shot entered through the right side of his head and sprayed blood on the wall to the left of him. As he got hit, he dropped on the ground, laying on his back with his arms stretched out to the sky. The woman he was running to, I assume she was his wife, let out a blood-curdling scream that I hear from time to time all these years later. Still puts goosebumps on my skin. She dropped down to her knees, sobbing, buried her head in his chest. As life was leaving him, a toddler, who I assume was his son, was trying to wake him up by moving his shoulders, similar to how you would wake your father up if an important phone call or friend came to visit the house. This is April 10th, Battle of Ramadi. The Revenge of Echo Company. Now, the little boy, the toddler that was attempting to wake up the man that had just been shot in the head, I can't fault him if this boy grew up to be part of Mujahideen or ISIS. My father is my hero. And around 3 years old and being a toddler, I wanted to be just like my father. So when you're a little kid and you see something like this, imagine the pain that you have to live with for the rest of your life. These are the casualties of war. This is what happens in combat. April 10th, we were on a revenge tour. We were deployed to a hotbed of terrorist activity. Insurgents were embedded in our area of operations, and a full-out assault by the insurgents started April 6th and continued on to this day. But little did they know that Marines live out the saying, no better friend, no worse enemy. We had been better friends when we first got there, handing out school supplies, ensuring the security and stability of our area of operations while the nation rebuilt. But it seems that our kindness was taken for weakness, and we lost our brothers due to the heavy insurgency in our area of operation. We flushed them out on April 10th. They decided that it would be a good idea to fight us gun to gun, man to man, which turned out to be deadly for them. Now, the episode prior, I spoke about the gunfight that I was in that led to us entering the house, that led to us going to a rooftop, which led to us being abandoned by our lieutenant and me pulling down my friend from a hallway after we got sprayed by AK-47 fire and my friend almost lost his leg. So after that whole ordeal, when the medics had shown up and injected Theophilus Tor with morphine, it seemed like we were what's called consolidating. Now, the operation was called Bug Hunt, started early in the morning when the sun was rising. And it was the standard operating procedure of the enemy to attack us at midday when the sun was hottest and we had been patrolling, which they thought would make us weaker, but they poked the hornet's nets. There's no worse enemy than a pissed off Marine. And they had us pissed off at this point. Days prior, we had lost good men. I had lost men I considered to be brothers. And so now we were the hornets looking around to sting the enemy and to show them why we were no better friend, but we're no worse enemy. We had trained rules of engagement, and we had trained our mentality. Back then we called it a light switch mentality, where we have to be nice, we have to be approachable, but at a moment's notice we can flick on a light switch and go from Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde and exact extreme violence on our enemy. After we had consolidated, trucks came, a Humvee came to pick up Texador, and the enemies that were downstairs when we breached the house, we had put flexi cuffs on them, and we had dead terrorists on top of the rooftop that we brought down. Now, the man from downstairs who I threw a grenade at, he wasn't dead, but he was extremely injured. And he just kept on crying, "Fisherman, fisherman, Mr. Fisherman." But we knew he wasn't a fisherman because we had seen his weapon that he had used to shoot at us as we were making our way to the house. Being so that we were on our revenge arc, our no worse enemy arc, we had thrown the dead bodies from the rooftop. We brought them downstairs and we threw them in the dirt in front of the door of the house. And we took the man who had been shooting at us, and we threw him by the dead bodies. He started crying because these were his friends that we had just killed. But in our defense, him and his friends shouldn't have been trying to kill us. Throwing him by his dead friends intensified his plea that he was just a fisherman. Tears and snot were coming out his face as he was saying, "Mr. Fisherman, fisherman." I remember one of the Marines that were with us said, "Yeah, you should be sleeping with the fishes like your friends." So the operation was wrapping up after the incident with Texador in the house. At least we thought it was. And we were making, for lack of a better term, a rest in the city. When I say no better friend, no worse enemy, I really mean that. We were out for revenge. We were out for blood. The whole purpose of Operation Bug Hunt was to hunt these bugs that were blowing up our brothers, that were shooting our brothers in the head, that were taking the life from our brothers and making our area of operation more dangerous and jeopardizing our mission. So there was no love lost. And to drive that point home, one of the Marines, we knew him as Preacherman. He was extremely indoctrinated when it came to his religion. And being a preacherman, he was supposed to be about love and forgiveness and grace. But there comes a certain point when you've had enough. And he wasn't on his path to love and forgiveness and grace. He wanted blood as much as the most heathen Marine wanted blood for taking the life of our brothers. I'm not going to say his name, but I will describe to you the type of anger we were all dealing with when it came to the terrorists. As he was putting a terrorist on the back of a 7-ton truck to transport him back to our firm base, he told the terrorist to put one foot up on the back of the 7-ton. And he was giving the impression to the terrorist that he was going to help the terrorist get on the 7-ton because the terrorist had his hands flexi-cuffed behind his back. So the terrorist looked at this Marine, and the terrorist didn't speak English, and this Marine didn't speak Arabic. But through gestures, through motions, the terrorist understood that he was supposed to put one leg up on the back of the 7-ton, and it was implied that the Marine was going to help him use that one leg and I guess push him up or hoist him up to the back of the 7-ton so that he can make entry. But this Marine was not in a helpful mood at all. When someone tries to take your life, and when someone takes the life of your friends, the last thing you're thinking, for good or for bad, and remember, we were 19, 20, 21, the one thing you're thinking is, beef is not over for carrying ashes in an urn. So, this terrorist's foot, right leg, is up, almost like Captain Morgan rum pictures, but a little bit higher because the back of the 7-ton was about mid-thigh to waist level, depending on your height. And as the terrorist put his foot up and rested on the back of the 7-ton, this Marine cocked his foot back like it was a game-winning field goal he had to kick, and he kicked this terrorist right in the dick, balls and all. After I saw him kick the terrorist in the dick, the terrorist dropped down and gasped for air. If you're listening to this story and you have testicles, you understand even a nut tap, it feels like your world ends. So much less if you get kicked in the balls, you're definitely going to feel like your world is ended. But that's the type of energy that we were on. It was no longer best friend, security, and stability. Again, our whole motive for Operation Bug Hunt, and when I say our, I mean the lower rank and the younger Marines, were to find these guys that killed our brothers and to take their life with extreme violence. So throughout the rest of the day, there were 7-tons transporting men that we had either captured or dead bodies back and forth. We got the call, or we got word from our higher ups, that anyone with a red and white checkered headband was free game to kill. That was the updated rules of engagement. When you're operating with hatred and anger and vengeance and vitriol like I was, you hear something like that. And this is going to sound weird to you if you're not a Marine, but it feels like Christmas. Closest thing I can relate it to. Hearing that we can go and kill anybody that's wearing that uniform, they've been cleared as an enemy, felt like Christmas. Now, I didn't see anyone else with the rest of the day with that uniform on, so there is no more killing for me the rest of the day. It was just rounding up more men that had planned to kill us, we would go into homes, and the rule at the time is you could only have one AK-47, and your AK-47 could not have what we call the guts, the bolts, the pieces that made it fire on the inside. And when we went to a home and saw a stockpile of AK-47s or other weapons, we would make sure that we beat the living daylights out of whomever stockpiled those weapons. Getting back to the young man, to the toddler that was trying to wake up his father. This was towards the end of the operation. And all throughout the day, there were different gunfights, house to house, field to field. So this gentleman that was shot in the head, I don't know what the backstory was with him and the other Marine that shot him. But I don't want to focus on that backstory. I want to go back to seeing the little boy trying to wake him up. I've seen enough dead bodies to know that it's hard to separate sleep from death. The men that I've seen die, when they're laying down on their back, they look like they're sleeping. I can't explain it, but they look just like they're sleeping. So it's so hard to distinguish sleep from death. So imagine a 5-year-old being able to distinguish sleep from death. And to him, his father was sleeping. His mom is crying. So the simple solution in a toddler mind is, let me wake up my dad. I tell you this story because there's no amount of therapy that you can go to if you're empathetic, and if you're an introvert. I'm an introvert right now. And one of the things about being an introvert and being alone is you're left with your thoughts. It's been 22 years seeing those images and trying to reconcile what I saw. And one of the reasons that affected me so much is I left Africa. First time I left Africa, I think I was 2 or 3. Then I came back, and then I left for good at the age of 5. When I say my father was my hero, still is, one of the fondest memories I have is riding on his neck. He picked me up as, I think I was a 3 or 4-year-old, and he put me on his shoulders as he was walking on our property farmland. And I felt like whoever this guy is, he's a superhero. I used to look at my father like a superhero. If he took off his shirt, I'm taking off my shirt. If he's sitting a certain way, I'm sitting that way. I wanted to be just like him. The civil war in Liberia separated me from my father, and it separated me from my mother. And there's no better place for a child to be than with his father, if he has a loving father. I was taken away from my loving father, and I was an insecure, scared child when I came to America. I even had a bedwetting problem, born out of fear. So seeing that boy trying to wake up his father, I often think about the relationship with me and my father. And I feel so bad for that little boy, what he had to see. That's why war is so terrible. That's why all means should be exhausted before going to war. It's unavoidable at times, especially since as human beings, we can't only focus on the greater angels of our humanity. We have to have a healthy way to exercise the lesser angels of our humanity. Greater angels are love, peace, thoughtfulness, and the likes. But the lesser angels of humanity, hate, war, conflict, we can't ignore that. That makes us as much human as the greater angels do. For everyone that feels they're full of love and love their family, they truly hate their enemy, because you have to hate your enemy to be able to take your enemy's life. When you're married and you love your wife, you have to be mean to the advances of other women that want you. Someone's feelings is going to get hurt at the end of the day. And no matter how great you see yourself when you look in the mirror, you're going to be the villain in somebody's story. So the day ended. We wrapped up. When we got back to our base, we do this thing called after actions report, where we write down everything that happened during the operation or during the patrol as best as we can recollect. On the after actions report, I wrote down the fact that Lieutenant Valdez had pushed me and Texador so that he could run downstairs, leaving us in harm's way to be exposed. And when I said that, our platoon sergeant, Staff Sergeant Craig, he went ape shit, called me outside. He said, "How dare you call Lieutenant Valdez a coward? Do you know that he was shot that day?" To which I replied, "I don't know or care what happened to him in another gunfight. I'm telling you what happened to him when it came to me and Texador. I don't want to be with him. I don't want to go out on patrol with him. I don't trust him at all." So my after action reports were swept under the rug. It went nowhere. It wasn't until Staff Sergeant Craig was relieved of his command that we got a new platoon sergeant, and I got a chance to confront Lieutenant Valdez. The new platoon sergeant called me in a room where it was the three of us, Lieutenant Valdez, the platoon sergeant, and myself. The first thing I told Lieutenant Valdez is, "I'm not going to call you sir. I don't respect you. You pushed me and Texador so you could run away thinking about your own life, and you didn't give a fuck about us. You put us in harm's way." To which Lieutenant Valdez said,
No, Tor. I wasn't trying to push you to run out the way. I was trying to push you guys to protect you, to push you downstairs once I realized the enemy was on the roof.
but then I replied to Lieutenant Valdez, "That doesn't make sense. We already knew the enemy was on the roof. You're the one that asked us to go on the rooftop with you." When I replied with that, Lieutenant Valdez told me,
Well, Tor, you think that's what happened, but that's not what happened. And to tell you the truth, Tor, what you did that day was very heroic and very brave, and that's what I put you up for a Navy achievement medal with a valorous Navy achievement medal.
and I told him, "I don't want the medal. I want you gone. I don't give a damn about no medal. I don't want you here no more. You shouldn't be leading us." Lieutenant Valdez then told me,
Well, the medal's not for you. It speaks to the courage of the unit and what the unit's doing.
So that's my story of April 10th. It's time to wrap up this episode. As you guys notice, these episodes get more intense, and there's still to tell you about. So tune in next episode as we describe the combat actions in May. I thank you for listening. Again, my name is Theophilus Tor. This is episode 6 of Ramadi Days.